Getting started. I just keep it going. So so it's going to stay on there like that. Yeah. So it's like that's something we believe in. But generally, whoever's not leading it doesn't get to know too much. They get the bio and that's it. So it tends to be like as it happens on the day as well. So there's a little bit about that as well.
I think we found it better, haven't we?
Yeah.
Like if we know too much, I like the element of surprise during the interview. It's good like that.
It just it keeps it a bit more free flowing, doesn't it? A bit more sort of natural as well.
Should we get going?
Sure. We'll just go straight in with the intro then. Okay.
Hello, this is the Every Man Can podcast based on mental strength, how we can use it in our everyday lives, interviewing local people, using their experience, their wealth of experience through their personal journeys and their own professional journeys, how they use it for themselves, how they use it for other people, and hopefully you can take something from it. We hope you enjoy. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Every Man Can podcast. I've been getting that wrong every time.
Right.
I know. Haven't I? Today we're in Yoga X Life in Newcastle in Oosburn, which is a part of Newcastle. So we're on our travels today, hopefully starting to do a bit more of this and getting out of our own town and coming to see people.
What a venue, by the way.
Oh, it's unbelievable. So we're in a yoga studio, aesthetics amazing, energy amazing, and we've got a great guest today we'll introduce in a minute. Richie, how are you?
I'm okay. Just recovered. I've actually came back from Isle of Wight Festival after seeing Prodigy, Streets, Pet Shop Boys, Green Day, and then some others. I just absolutely burnt the candle at every end I could find.
Bit of excess, Richard?
Definitely, and regrettably came back with all these other symptoms that I've kind of pretty much resolved now, so I'll start back at work tomorrow.
Well, Matt the Tooth, how are you?
Of course, thank you.
Matt,
I knew this would be
So,
yeah, go on.
Matt currently has one of his front teeth missing.
Do you know, I'm just thinking, I'm going to put this on socials.
You could fit
You
two
couldn't
in
have to.
You know how conscious I am about it, and even when I had one in, I was quite conscious about it. I'm going to put this on socials just for a laugh. For
Good
everyone.
lad.
So if you'd like to see my tooth,
That's
go on our socials.
That's it.
At Every Man Can.
Have a laugh at yourself.
We need a meme about laughing at yourself, that's it, basically.
I'll put that on. But yes,
there's a bit of a gap there, you could include the text in, I think.
There's a big gap. You get £2 coins through there.
He messages this morning, lads, I'm not going on camera today, I've got no tooth. So we were like, what's up? What's happened?
Yeah, I've opened myself up.
You should have just made a story up, made it better than you just getting it sorted.
Good job I put subtitles on, because I'm a lisp. Can you see lisp?
Do we look at me for? No, I wonder.
So I got some good news yesterday.
Yes.
Final part of end of the journey with the police, which has been
Over 3 years.
over 3 years. So I got some news yesterday unexpectedly whilst watching the Euros. Checked my emails for some reason. You know when you sat there and you think, I'll just check my emails. No rhyme or reason on a Saturday afternoon to check your emails, and there was this email, and I was like, oh, wow. So
justifiably.
Library.
Hopefully start to put things to an end. So
Be interesting when we get to that point where we're going to do. Now I've got some electrics in Betty. We can start to do this and maybe do it. We can record him when we like in the back of the van, and actually do those interviews
What,
for
a
each
podcast
other.
or?
Yeah, podcast to interview each other about our stories. Yeah. Sorry, that's a different. That's some
fake
a
camper
different
van.
venture. Sorry, I'll just. Yeah. Oh my
You know
God.
who tell him off for that.
I'll put a dental chair in the back.
Yeah, for me.
Fix your teeth. I don't know where we're going with that, but yeah. So, shall I introduce today's guest?
Yes.
Okay, this has been long term coming, and we've been arranging this, not through any fault of himself, I might add. But here we are. So, I want to introduce Nick Abel, from Newcastle upon Tyne. I can't even get that out for some reason. He's a multi-instrumentalist, composer, educator, and performing musician of over 2 decades. Praised for his musical talent as a teenager by local stars, including Sting and Mark Knopfler. Nick was a student and disciple of the great late Pandit Ravi Shankar, where he lived and toured internationally with the Shankar family for more than 10 years and performed at venues such as, wait for this, Royal Albert Hall in London, Carnegie Hall in New York City, Sydney Opera House in Australia, the Théâtre de Champs-Élysées in Paris, the National Concert Hall in Taipei, Taiwan, as well as headlining festivals WOMAD, Reading, UK, the Sacred World Music Festival, Fes Morocco, and many private events, including those for ROLEX, for various charities such as the Elephant Foundation and PETA, to name a few. Nick became a member of the Anoushka Shankar Ensemble in 2006, touring globally on her Rise tour. Her album which was nominated for a Grammy Award and has accompanied Anoushka in concerts globally for 21 years, most recently the Elbphilharomonie. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Hamburg in Germany, the Philharmonie de Paris and the Ravi Shankar Centenary Concert at the Royal Festival Hall in London with guests Dhani Harrison, John McLaughlin and Nitin Sawhney. Nick composes music for TV, video games, multimedia installations and films. He also works as an educator and runs the Andy James Guitar Academy alongside the Five Finger Death Punch guitarist Andy James, and works as an internet entrepreneur, having partnered with guitar legend Frank Gamble, Daniel Tompkins of Tesseract, and helped many others as a consultant, most notably Alan Robson, MBE, on his site robsonsworld.com. And after more than 10 years working in online education and the internet, Nick is re-emerging into music after a dark period with a unique sound medicine and sound healing aspect to his work, following years of frequency meditation and linking this back to his years learning from the great Pandit Ravi Shankar and the deep healing powers of music. Nick will release his first solo album in early 2025. Not far off at all.
Do we need to say anything else?
Yeah,
podcast over.
What's your favourite colour?
What a bio.
Green.
As we can see. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Wow.
We always ask our guests 3 questions.
Mm-hmm.
The first question up would be, what is mental strength to you?
Mental strength to me is not avoiding negative things in life, trauma, etc. It's when those things happen, because they do happen, is to keep going through it, as difficult as that gets, and it does get difficult for everybody at different points in their life, and find, for me, as many ways as possible to overcome that.
Right. So turning it...
Get to the other side of it as quickly as possible, ideally, by using various things which we're going to talk about
as well
today. Yeah.
So when you, is this something you mentioned there about not avoiding those things that you know are actually going to cause you difficulties, or turning your attention towards them? That's what you're indicating. Is that something that you've always had in your life, or is that something you've developed a learning, or?
I suppose I've always had it, but then I haven't had the awareness that that's what it was. I think everybody has it, because people do overcome adversity, trauma, all sorts of things. So I think everybody has it within them, and everybody does it whether they realise it or not. Aside from those people who do go down the end, suicide and things like that, because that is a thing that happens in this world, But aside from that, I think we all have it within us. Yeah.
I think one of those things, isn't it? I thought we obviously looking at your bio there. There's obviously some people might listen to that bio and think, well, you're obviously a very successful man in your field. You've had, in what you've done and the talent you've obviously got and where that's taken you. Surely that doesn't cause any problems for you, Nick, does it?
This is the thing, right? When you do things in the public eye and work with the people who I've worked with, even though I'm in the background, I like to be in the background, I wouldn't like to be an artist. I wouldn't like to deal with that amount of pressure. There's always things behind the scenes that go down that people in the public out there on the other side viewing it don't see. Obviously, people around you personally, friends and family, acquaintances and all of that, they do get to see that. But there's this kind of like a crossing of a path that, people are not aware of, but it's certainly there. So I would say, certainly for me and everyone who I've worked with, everyone deals with stuff.
Yeah.
There's no way that that's avoidable.
Is that a supportive network then? So in that industry, which has been described as ruthless, it is what,
Well, the music industry is
ruthless. But
it is.
No matter what industry you're in, you're working at a high performance level, aren't you? You're working at the highest level, where scrutiny, mistakes aren't accepted, etc., etc. When you're touring, when you're in that environment, is it an accepting environment that people are struggling, or is it leave your shit at the door, come in, deliver, leave?
Well, this is the thing, right? The music industry isn't regulated, right? You have things like the Musicians' Union in the UK and various other organisations throughout the world that try to regulate this and create rules and fair treatment to musicians and all of that. But to answer your question, it really depends on who you're working with, because everybody's different. There's no set way. You know what I mean? There's no set rule book.
But suppose on a tour,
Yeah.
when you're building them friendships and you're building them relationships with people, does that then become easier to almost support each other because you start to recognise on a long tour and stuff?
Yeah, of course. And, you know, working with artists, they get all the glory. It's their music, it's their name, but they also have to deal with all of the negative stuff as well. But all of the people around them, the team, the other musicians, the management, the assistants, the whole thing from promoters, venues, all of that, it's all part of like one machine that operates, and everybody has an important job, I guess, within that. And if one of those elements is removed, then the artist suffers.
Yeah.
So everybody does support each other, certainly the artists that I've been blessed to work with, who, in my view, are very ethical and very humble. And, there's no... I have had issues with other artists, so this is what I'm saying. There's no set way, really.
Okay. I mean, it would be unfair. I suppose it's like picking on any particular group, wouldn't it, and saying that it's always like this, it's always like that. But a lot of the music you've been involved with is of a particular type, whether they refer to it as world music, it's often from like the Western view is viewed that way, isn't it? Is it particularly, is that more prone to picking up a certain type of culture within it that is more supportive, that is largely more about well-being and being part of a collective rather than...
Absolutely.
Is it?
Yeah. But I'm also into, when I was 13, I got into guitar and I was listening to Metallica and Guns N' Roses. Yeah. So equally, I'm into heavy music as well, and I've worked, currently working in that field with Andy James as well, who's in Five Finger Death Punch, which is the complete opposite. Yeah. Although they're very ethical as well, so it's interesting. It's a hard one to answer.
And I suppose there's probably egos that comes into play as well as people get more successful or as they get more exposure, if they surround themselves by the right type of people or the wrong type of people,
Again, that varies from individual to individual. Right. Working with someone like Pandit Ravi Shankar, who was my guru, teacher, like a father figure, mentor. I lived with them, travelled the world with them multiple times for many, many years. So I would consider him as an absolute icon of the 20th century, 100%. A true master of his music,
For people that don't know as well, how would you illustrate, to the cultural touch points for Ravi Shankar then?
I think the term that was said by George Harrison was he's the godfather of world music. I think Paul McCartney said, Ravi Shankar is probably one of the top 3 musicians of the 20th century, another one being Mozart. Right. I don't know who the second of it was, but that's kind of like the level of... Yeah.
So your journey then, so let's go back. So you're starting off, 13 on the guitar?
Yeah.
And then talk us through how that built into, obviously, a career, into getting...
So, I was 13. In fact, one of my earliest memories is being 8 years old, being in Newcastle City Centre in Central Arcade, where Windows, the music shop, is, and seeing the guitars in the window, being with my parents on a Saturday in Newcastle. And I just had this vision of I just knew that I was going to be a guitar player. And for some reason, because my parents weren't musical, I just had this connection with it that I can't really explain. And I didn't get an instrument till I was 13. So really it goes from when I was 8, I think. To answer your question, so from 13 till the age of 22, which is when I went to India and things really exploded in terms of me doing stuff. I spent probably the age of 13 till about 17 just as a hermit, really. Obviously, I went to school and then
learning your craft.
Later, I had a job, I had a paper round. Then I was at school, so I was a hermit. I just sat in my room, playing the guitar, reading guitar magazines, and I didn't really realise. But I suppose because I was so what's the term? Narrow-minded with it, there was nothing else that mattered. I guess it paid off. And
what decade would that have been then? When you were learning 13 to 19?
Early 90s.
Early 90s. So this is pre-internet, pre-YouTube videos. How were you teaching yourself on the guitar?
So I had a paper round.
Yeah.
So I used to go to do my paper round every day, and there would be guitar magazines in the newsagent. Right. So I would get the guitar magazines, every month there was 4 or 5 different magazines that I would get every month, and I would read articles of through artists who I liked and lessons in there and all of that, and that's really
Then
how
all your
I
cards
learned.
incredible.
So sorry, just at a young age you get that recognition then from Mark Knopfler, Sting.
Mm-hmm.
Good, right? Unbelievable. And then
This is the thing, right? A lot of the things that I did was normal to me, but I suppose when I developed later, it became, oh, wow, what a cool thing that this person's done. But these were things that were just obvious to me. So when I was trying to get my name around, I rung the Chronicle myself, you know, and got myself in the Chronicle, and that led to being in the paper multiple times. I reached out and wrote letters to people to try to raise money to go to this college in America that I wanted to go to. I wrote to Mark Knopfler, Sting, loads of people, right? Businesses like Asda, Northern Rock Foundation, loads of local ones, but also national ones as well. And that's how a lot of these things came out, because they were asked for a tape, and I got praised in a letter. Sorry, we can't give you any money to fund you going to college, but this is this and this is that. And the Chronicle heard about this, and this is how it became like a thing, you know.
brilliant.
So, yeah.
Self-promotion, it's important, isn't
So
it?
your journey then around when we talk about mental strength and stuff, so is this something you can go back to that's deep-rooted, or is it something that as you developed, and what age did you start to think? Because I suppose when I was younger, you don't think of them things, do you? You just
don't have an awareness of it, no.
So is there something that happened in your life? Is there a journey around that?
Can I say, the other thing as well, from someone who listens to music, someone who plays it, if you're playing with it, you're singing. You must be seeing other people around you as other artists, and that's it, basically. Like, we're here, we play music, that's what we do. Whereas people externally, it's like if you ever meet someone, meet your idol or something, it's very different, isn't it? If you were someone who's alongside them rather than someone who's there to watch them, to listen to them.
It's completely different.
Yeah. So you don't have that wow factor. Is quite different, isn't it?
I've been blessed to work with more than one of the idols that I had as a teenager. So I have, I suppose, I'm experienced with that. But again, it goes back to what I said before. Everybody's different. Every situation is different, you know.
So when did you start to have awareness?
Probably a real serious awareness would have been in the last 4 years. A real deep awareness that's led me to where I am now, after going through quite a dark period, which is mentioned in the bio, you know. A very dark period of about 2 or 3 years. Being in such a dark place, so helpless, isolated. This is before, during, and after COVID as well, because I had an internet business and I wasn't interacting with people hardly ever. Like I said before, find ways to overcome things, and that's kind of where I was at, and I really was desperate, you know. I knew that I had to do something to pull myself out of it, because I wasn't getting any support from anyone around us, and I didn't really ask for any support either. So that led me to really go into this whole healing, awareness thing of mental health, how it affects men, specifically fathers, which I'm a dad as well, you know, and all of the things that go with that, and learning to overcome your own darkness and your own BS.
You got a family.
Yeah.
Was it a son? You had a son.
Son and a daughter. Yeah. My daughter's 18. My son's 7.
7. So the touring thing. I mean, I'm assuming that as you're building up, and when you talked earlier about developing mental strength, if you're not taking your children would have been young at the time. So my daughter was born probably 2 years after I was working with the Shankars. So I was touring the world and doing all this, living in India in the winter, living in California in the summer with the Shankar family in their home in Encinitas, California, and coming home for a month or two here or there. It was still very new. Didn't really know where it was going to go. I was happy doing it. It was hard work, much harder than what I ever thought that it would be. But that's what I wanted, so I was willing to deal with whatever arose, and it was very difficult. So yeah, having a child did change things, but at that point I was kind of thinking, I don't really want to be an artist. I like working in the background. I don't want to deal with that kind of pressure. So I was quite happy to remain in the background, and that led me to
wanting to tour a little bit less. I still wanted to do it, and I did. But that led me to think about, well, what am I going to do? You know?
Just touch back on something you mentioned. It stuck with me when you said that obviously you started to have a real deep understanding around the mental strength and techniques and start to really understand it. And you said, I'm a dad. So my daughter's here today. My son, he's 17 now. And I think when you are a parent and you are aware, I think having children makes you want to become more aware and have a deeper understanding of it so you can pass that on to them.
Well, yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I would, yeah. And my situation, just to be very clear, is my daughter's 18. I've been very close with her. But sadly, my son, and this is one of the things that did certainly trigger me going into a dark place. It wasn't the only thing, but it was definitely one of the things. For one reason or another, I haven't seen him for a few years at this point due to these issues that occur. And because I was in a bit of a dark place, I couldn't afford legal counsel and all of this. I did attempt, but, you know, $8,000 later, it's like, well, so I'm still in that situation now, and I've learned, I'm not ashamed to say it, but I don't like to say it, but I've learned to accept it to a point. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to fight it, but this is something that I've learned to try to accept the situation for what it is instead of trying to run away from it and run away from the emotions of it, which was very difficult for me to do, you know. So, yeah. And I know a lot of other men and women as well are in that position where they can't see a child for whatever reason, and they have to go through the legal process in order for that to be reinstated. Yeah, so...
But when you're in a dark place anyway, and that's another trigger that comes in.
Yeah.
It's another layer, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when you talk about your dark place and that time that you were in, COVID, all of that, if you don't mind me asking, what sort of feelings were you having at that time? Was it anxiety, depression, darkness?
I've always been quite an emotional person and felt emotions quite strongly. But with this, it was just on another level, like every negative emotion, other than one of the things that I never went into was suicidal thoughts or anything like that, you know, so it never went to that level. Which sometimes I would say to myself, like, I wish in some ways, you know, when you have your own thoughts, I wish I had an escape from feeling like this because it was so awful. But yeah.
So the drive doesn't always take you to feeling suicidal, but actually, if it's depression and a sense of loss and just not being able to get your motivation up, your energy levels, you know, your sense of worth, all that stuff.
All of that.
But everything else is driving, and often, you know, I always say about sometimes having children, I said having a good relationship with your daughter. Yeah. It's like, it can be sometimes the only purpose you've got there, right, as well. So,
yes, definitely.
And I'm going to guess, but you can point out, but I'm assuming the music's a huge part. Like you said, you were still doing the online business at that point.
Yeah, so I've had the online business with Andy for like 11 years now, and I've done a few others over the years as well with different people. So that's been something that's always been there. So in terms of finances, I've always had an income because it's an internet business and it doesn't require a lot of work because we've spent years building it up. It still generates money. So in a way, that was a blessing and a curse because I never sank to the point where I was like, oh, I've got nowhere to live, or I've got, you know, at one point I had to go back to my parents for a while. But, you know.
I've done that. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really hard.
It's hard.
So... yeah, it was a blessing and a curse that having the money coming in where I could just go away and just that definitely sent me further into it, I think.
What was it? Was it the case of putting the mask on when you were doing the work and being conscious of that? Is that how it was?
Well, like I said, it didn't require a lot of work. Yeah. After 4 years of building the content, it's automated. Right. You know, we're using the internet stuff, so sales just come in. Yeah, everything's automated. I have a couple of people working for me that deal with the support of the site and various other things. So my involvement is very minimal, you know. So I was still able to keep it going. Yeah. So, yeah.
I'd like to, if we just take a quick break, we'll come back, we'll have a chat to you about exactly what did work for you to get you through that and go a bit further in, a bit further into this story as well. Thank you.
Cool.
We're just having a quick breather from the podcast. Just to let you know, you can find Every Man Can on all your normal social media platforms. You can also get this podcast and all of our other episodes wherever you get your podcasts from. All we ask, and this is the only thing we will ever ask of anybody, is that you like, share and follow everything that we do, because all we do this for is to help and inspire other people.
All right, thanks for that little break there. So back into it, Nick. If you want to summarise, because I know that you were saying you must have been involved with Shankar family for a good 20 years more.
Yeah, 20 years. Yeah.
So that's like a huge period of time there that's passed. And exactly, obviously, we're going to talk to you about this sort of really dark period that you hit, where mental health really suffered, and you really dark time. But actually, what exactly led you from, being involved with all that touring and then straight, through to the difficulties? And because you said it was before COVID, it progressed through as well.
So yeah, obviously, Guruji is the name that we would address Ravi as, out of respect. So Guruji died, passed away 10 years ago, and I wasn't involved for a few years after that. And then I reached out to Anoushka because she was living in London. She was married to a British film director at the time, living in London. And we reconnected, and 2 weeks later, I'm on stage at the Albert Hall for the Proms with Anoushka, back into it again. So, yeah.
That's it. And so that tour that carried on, that's some of the tours we mentioned earlier on with Anoushka.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then something took a turn.
That's right, yeah. So I continued working with Anoushka on and off. She became a mother and then had a second child, was based in London. So her work was not as regular, long tours, which suited me.
Right.
I would go away for a week, 2 weeks, a couple of days, come home. I was happy to be involved with it still, and it was nice after all the years and a bit of a gap after Guruji passed away to be back involved with it and not have to deal with the pressure of, well, I need to make X, Y, Z from this to fund my daughter. I've got a business that does well now, so I was able to enjoy it a lot more,
right?
Which was great, And Anoushka's career really exploded, When I first started doing shows with her, when I first started working with the Shankars, she was playing small venues, 200, 500 people. 10 years later, she's playing at the Sydney Opera House, sold out, quite a big artist, getting nominated for Grammys and all of that, So, yeah, it was good to be part of that and to see her develop as an artist. Coming from being a fan of the music as well, of course, it's great to be around something like that over so many years. So, yeah.
And you weren't to know at that point what was some of the difficulties that are about to emerge.
Well, yeah.
Are you happy to talk about some of those?
Of course, yeah. So it started with the breakdown of the relationship with me ex-partner and me little boy, which it broke down a couple of times for one reason or another, without going into detail about all of that, and then ultimately it broke down for a long period, over a year. And that was quite difficult, but I managed to get through it. And then contact resumed, everything resumed fine. I was seeing him for a year, no issue. And it broke down again. And that really knocked me. That was the point when it really knocked me. And my dad had cancer, and he was going through some treatment. My parents moved house. I was living in a flat at the time. I really wanted somewhere with a garden. And my mum said, why don't you come and stay with us for a while? Because I was spending a lot of time at their house anyway, support my mum and my dad through him going through cancer treatment, and because I had a great garden and all of that. And my mum was, when you're looking for a house, if you've left where you've left, then you don't have to deal with all of the giving the notice. It might be able to get you at the top of the list in terms of getting a rental place, a house that I wanted. That ended up being a bit of a negative thing as well, because moving back to your parents, when you're an adult, and I'm running an internet business, I'm sitting on the bed with my shorts on, with a laptop on, and they're like, my dad worked in a factory his whole life, my mum worked in Asda. They don't get it, so we clashed, massively clashed. So that led to that environment becoming quite volatile, which further made it very difficult for me. And then I had another business with an artist called Frank Ambali, mentioned it earlier, who is a pioneer of the guitar. Has a technique called sweep picking, which he developed, invented, if you like.
Right.
And I ended up running a website, a membership website, selling digital products, courses and whatnot for the guitar with him. And he introduced me to him, actually. That was great to work with another person whose music I listened to, who I was a fan of as a kid, you know, but who was a renowned educator as well as an artist. And very successful for 3 years. I went to his house in LA multiple times to film stuff, and we worked really well together. And then for one reason or another, that broke down, and he wanted to own everything. And I was like, well, no, or if you want to buy me out, and they didn't want to do that. So basically, in a nutshell, I got shafted. Jesus. You know, ripped off, scarred, whatever you want to call it, you know. But this was spread out over like a 6-month period. It wasn't just one day you're in, one day you're out. Yeah. I had my assets, which were the site, which I owned. Yeah. For my own security, we had a contract, and he obviously owned his content. Yeah. So they built another site and shafted me and took a few things that they shouldn't have took in terms of the platform, some of the platform that I owned, and basically said, see you later. But this was over a 6-month period where I wasn't getting paid, and I was still having to do work, and I was getting put under a lot of pressure from them. I suppose when I look back, trying to wear me down so that I just signed it over to them. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't do that. Yeah. We were contracted with that, so I was firm on that. Hence, they built another platform, and then I lost probably 60 grand that I was owed from work that I'd done, courses that I'd worked on that were being sold throughout the 6-month period where I wasn't getting paid because he was in America. The bank account was American, the business was in America. I couldn't do anything. Yeah. My name was on the bank account, but they removed me from it and then made excuses about this going wrong, and 6 months later, it's like, see you later. Yeah. And
the extra cost and the extra stress of having to deal with all that would have been...
It was mainly the stress.
Without any guarantees.
The stress and the pressure of it was far worse than the loss of money. I mean, it just so happened that I'd moved back to my parents anyway to help with my parents, but also to leave the flat that I was in and to look for a house. Just as well that I did, because I probably would have had to have moved back there anyway. Yeah.
I think just want to come in on that. And the thing that I've just finalised with the police is very, very similar thing to you. I think some things are designed to wear you down to the point where you just go, oh, do you know what? You give in. Yeah. And when you were talking there just about, and it's not so much establishments or businesses or organisations, people with greed and a poor way of going about things, I suppose. It's just disgusting, isn't it? That like people will put people in a position where, I tell you what we'll do, we're going to wear you down mentally, physically, everything, to the point where you're just going to sign it over anyway. So why don't you just do it anyway? Yeah. But I think what you should give yourself praise for, and I don't do it enough for myself, and he tells me all the time, Richie, about this, is a lot of people are stronger than you think. And I think when things like that are happening, people go, well, it's just money, and money's not everything, but it's morals as well.
That was my work.
Exactly.
His work as well was our work. Yeah. And I'm not going to give that. We're contracted to it, so I'm going to be firm on that. Threaten us with legal action, do it. And that all of that happened. Mm-hmm. It never actually took place. It was just a threat to try and get me to agree.
But my point is, the strength, when you talk about mental strength,
the strength comes out of you in these times. Yeah. And that's when you do you
100%.
still feel terrible because you're still enduring it, but also you also have alongside of that is the feeling of strength, warrior mindset. All of these things come out because you're like, I know I'm not going to back down.
So during that time, then, sorry, Rich, I know about to say something, but so during that time and moving forward now, then, I've had to really dig deep into my toolbox to find my mechanisms, to find my coping strategies and stuff. Mm-hmm. So you've come from a dark place and you've had all this, and it's, I don't know if it's still ongoing or what's going on, but
no, it's resolved now. Yeah.
So when we talk about strategies, your toolbox, when you're opening up your toolbox and you're thinking, right, I know what I need to get out today. Are you at that point now, and what's worked for you?
Yeah. So this is what's on my notes here. You kind of you
got it there.
The bio was quite long, and it was almost like you didn't come up for air. So I would like to be very thorough here and reel off all of the things. And then if you want to pick up on any of them. So for me, it started with ambient music, Moby, FX Twin, drone music, going into that meditative state. I could never really meditate in silence. I always felt like I needed something there to guide me to focus on. and the ambient music. I've been a huge fan of ambient music for many years. And then that led me to discovering frequency and hertz music, which is specific frequencies that have a cellular effect on the body and the mind and all of that. And I listen to a lot of that, it's an everyday thing now for me. It's a way of life, which I suppose, looking back to working with the Shankars and Guruji, this is what he was doing. And this is what I was learning from him all those years ago. So it was almost like coming full circle and realising, I already know this, but it's being presented in a different way. That led to sound healing. Sound therapy is a term for this, going to sound baths, and that's why we're here, because in this very room is where I discovered sound baths in a really deep way, and attended many sound baths in this room with a wonderful guy called Andrew Lovell, an amazing man, artist, musician, and sound healer. And in this very room is where I really went deeply into that, which reminded me of being on stage with Guruji, where it would be like you go into a meditation and you'd be like, whoa, you'd have to like go like this at the end of it, like bring yourself round. And also the whole sound bath, the healing industry, I think since COVID, it's really boomed massively. It's a huge thing. And how I discovered you guys was through Aaron's podcast.
Right.
And forest bathing and all of that. These are some things that I tried. So I got to know Aaron through that, Reiki, energy healing is a massive thing. I started doing Reiki. I went a couple of times and I was like, And I thought, I'm feeling this anxiety in my body, right? And I just need to learn to be still, like really still. And then I started to tap into the really subtle energies within my body. And I went to Reiki every month for a year. And then after a few months, I really started to feel the benefits of it, because I was listening to myself on such a subtle level, because I was saying, I've got to learn to be still, really, really still though, So further on from that, looking at breath work, this is another element of healing and all of that, breathing right and going into that and all of the health benefits of that. I did that first in this room as well with my friend Sarah Law, who's a breathwork facilitator. I struggle with it because I've got asthma, and I struggle with doing it. So that's something I haven't really went deeply into for that reason. Another thing is I hired a life coach. So Paul Mort, who was from South Shields. He's an award-winning life coach, master coach of the year. I've known Morty for years, And in COVID, I was just so lost. I was like, I need to do something. Not just because of COVID, because I was doing all these dark things. I was taking substances, I was drinking. I was just trying anything that I could to numb the way that I felt and to take my mind away from thinking about those things. It was like a distraction, self-soothing, self-sabotage, all of that. I was like, I need to get out of this. But we're in COVID, so I'm on the internet. Paul Mort's got an online coaching thing called Unstoppable 28. I did that for a month. Then I went into Mansformation, a program that he has, which is 3 months long. That changed everything for me. However, the first time I did it, I didn't complete it. So I got kicked out at the end because I didn't turn up for the final meet and all of that. So I kind of got kicked off, essentially. I got so much out of that. But a year later, I was so annoyed with myself. I was like, I really want to finish it. I want to go to the meetup and I want to get the T-shirt and I want my certificate, even though I don't believe in all of that. I just wanted it. I wanted this T-shirt, right? I was like, so I did it again. I paid for it again and I did it again and I completed it, So hiring a life coach, various other things, into spirituality, which I'm massively into. We're here in this facility, talking about sound healing, yoga, breath work, meditation. These are all spiritual things. I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. So I'm into crystals. I'm into essential oils. What else? What else is on my list here? Forest bathing, grounding as well. So barefoot walking and all of that.
Grounding,
and this is a scientific proven thing. All of these things. Cold water therapy. One of the things with doing the Mansformation was, at the end of it, they did a sea dip in Shields. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to go into the salt water. I wanted to cleanse my body from all the bad things that I'd done. And I wanted to just do this. And I didn't get to do it the first time round. I did the second time round, which led me to doing this regularly. Not in the sea, because I struggle with it. but in the shower, doing hydrotherapy showers and all of this, going from hot to cold. This links to Wim Hof. So I am on a tangent here, but let me just keep going.
You carry on, it's brilliant.
To get them all in. Right, what else? Another one was doing kind acts to others. For me, I got a massive sense of fulfillment and pleasure from that. So I started doing volunteer work. I did volunteer work for a charity in Gateshead that provides books to people in prison, people who can't afford it, schools, all of that. I did that for like 6 months, you know. So that made me feel quite good in terms of giving us, you know, doing a service to others. Talking about medication, I've been on some medication. I've been on sertraline for a while, which in my dark period, I was so desperate. One of the things that I did was went to the GP. I hadn't done that previously. I went and asked for help. That helped for me a bit, yeah. But what really helped was taking nootropics, taking magnesium, taking electrolytes, brain function, physical activity, the oils, essential oils, and the main one is testosterone, TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, injecting testosterone into your body. I had my bloods done. A mate of mine teaches martial arts, trains Olympic athletes, all of that, and he was like, "You're deficient in testosterone. You need to get your bloods done," because I struggle to build muscle, but also the effect mentally on men. It's a hormone, right? It regulates your mood and all of these kind of things, which for me, I've always struggled with pushing myself, and I guess that's why I've achieved a lot, because I do consciously push myself.
So
yeah,
go on.
that's the last one. So yeah, testosterone, TRT,
Just this week.
is a huge one.
It is huge.
For your mindset, your mental health, and your mood, and all of these kind of things. It's not just about building up and going to the gym. No.
And resource, I mean, all the stuff you listed there is, for me, phenomenal in terms of like going on a journey and hearing someone do it. What's really what's partly interesting about it is that you're referring back to things that you had done, presumably with the Shankars, which is part of their culture, part of the music, and part of, I mean, it's a meditative music. There's a chants in there, and the frequencies that they're playing at that you've told me about before, and all this kind of stuff, linked into ancient medicines and all this. It's phenomenal. But the interesting thing is you brought that into your consciousness and realizing, actually, I know some of this shit, and actually these are the things that work for me, but I just never really considered them as being good for my mental health, as being good for my well-being. It was something that we did, and it was good. But now I have a need for this. Yeah, this is
in desperate times, I was through finding ways to overcome things. Yeah, in desperation. Yeah, a lot of the time. Well, I'm going to try this, and one thing led to another, and someone said, "Oh, try this," and hence all of these different things that I've just mentioned.
So on a day-to-day basis, then, obviously, a lot of that is quite time-consuming. You've got to put yourself in a quiet place. Yeah. So on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week when it's busy and you're doing things, do you have them? What is it in particular that you think, oh no, I need to grab something out my toolbox to fix myself quickly? Because a lot of that is like, it's just amazing, but we all have to have that quick. Well, just even if it gives you half an hour back.
For me, a lot of it's a way of life now. I do it every day because I enjoy it, but also it's a medicine. It's a thing that I need to do, like brushing your teeth or whatever. But to answer your question, in the morning when I wake up, I have my headphones, I have my phone, I go on YouTube, I'll go to Spotify, I have my playlists, and I'll go 20 minutes, half an hour, or I'll wake up earlier and I'll do it. That's how I can fit it into my day. Equally, of a night time when I go to bed, you know, watch telly or anything like that, very rarely. I'll do it then.
Okay. And just one more thing from me, sorry, Rich. It's interesting about the frequency thing. Something popped up on my Instagram the other week about a Beethoven song. Right. And it's been, I can't remember the name of the song, I should have kept it. But experts have said that the frequency used in that song and his composing is probably of the highest frequency for deep state of mind, for meditation, for everything. And I thought, These composers, they're switched on, they're on it, aren't they?
Well, there's a thing about Mozart. There's books about it. It's called the Mozart effect. And this is a scientifically proven thing that if you listen to his music before going for an interview or whatever, it increases your IQ.
Wow.
So that links to what you're saying about Beethoven. Yeah. And just to go into it in a little bit more detail, you're talking about frequencies, sound healing and all of that. Certain frequencies do different things on a cellular level to your body. So just to mention, we've got 528 hertz, 432 hertz, 888 hertz. These are certain frequencies, and people who are musicians will be kind of familiar with this. But these were used in ancient times for medicine, and even people like Nikola Tesla knew about all of this. And without getting into the whole thing about cancers and all of this, and I'm not a medical professional or anything like that, but I believe that a lot of these things do heal the body of ailments, diseases, and prevent them, physically, mentally, emotionally, in all of the areas.
This is something I was about to ask. It's pretty much the same line, because I know that it feels to me like an area where most people won't be on the radar. The people into music might be starting to see these things come up on the internet, mainly pushed because there appears to be research going on about it, which is baffling. We know that. I mean, you can see that demonstration of. I've seen visuals where you have.
It's called cymatics. Yeah.
Cymatics, right?
Yeah,
so you have like you might have loads of little metal filaments on a like you might put on a bass drum or something.
Board.
Yes,
Yeah.
And it forms into different patterns when you change your frequencies, right?
Sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt there. It's just literally behind your head, Rich, is exactly what you're talking about there.
Different like
in
fractals.
In this yoga studio.
Well,
not
actually,
fractals,
You
actually.
go on the bottom of your bottle. And that's the actual... I'll
So when you draw those,
stuff of that.
what are they called?
Cymatics.
There you go.
Cymatics. So, and actually when they change your frequency...
But
you can change... You can play the same music. This is what I can't get about. You can play the same music at different frequencies, right?
Yeah.
And actually broadcast frequencies. Something I'd read. I don't know how accurate this is.
I know what you're going to say. And it is accurate. Well, 440 hertz is what Western music is tuned to. That's the frequency. So you get a guitar tuner or a musical instrument tuner. It's 440 hertz.
Okay.
Which was decided by Rockefeller.
No kidding.
And it's an impure frequency, means it creates tension.
Why did he?
To dumb people down and
The working like the same as the Victorian kind of ideas of getting people in school prepared for the industry.
Yeah, having people working in. Yeah.
Go on. So 440. So you can have the same. You could broadcast it as something different.
Yeah.
It's not just broadcast frequencies, is it? Or is it?
So all Western musical instruments are tuned to that frequency. However, when I was studying with Guruji, he used to tune his sitar to 438. Not 440. And then in recent years, I've discovered that a lot of musicians, Frank, who I was working with, Prince, Jimi Hendrix, a lot of them tune their instruments not to 440 because it's an impure tone. They know about this. They tune it to 438 or 432, which is a very tiny increment, but it does have an impact. And if you play a musical note at 440 with the cymatics, the shapes and the patterns are mangled, they're disformed.
They can't settle.
So that's what it's doing to you on a cellular level, but also emotionally and all these things in the ether that aren't physical.
Right. The way I think about it as a simpleton,
Yeah.
or as someone who's not a musician or understands these things, is like if I'm tuning my radio, old school, between two different radio stations,
Mm-hmm.
and depending on where you are in the country, it might be faint or it might be not a very good frequency. It's like that sounds like if you get it, there's still a bit of crackling in the background. It's that kind of thing. It's impure.
Well,
not
really what it is, it's if you tune an instrument, say a guitar, and you play a chord, but one of the strings is out of tune,
right.
Most people, even non-musicians, kind of go, it's like that.
Right.
But the difference in frequencies is so subtle, so small, that you wouldn't really pick up on that. So that's what it is. It's actually the pitch, the tuning of the pitch that's being broadcasted.
You can go even further with this, can't you?
Yeah.
Doesn't the Earth have its own frequency? It's have its own sound anyway that it gives off?
So yeah, I mean, like I mentioned just there, the different frequencies, 528, 432, 888, there's also a whole load of other things on top of that, such as alpha, beta, theta, gamma. Yeah. These are different brain states that you go into in sleep and relaxation and all of that. that certain frequencies can put you into effectively. You've also got stuff like orange noise, brown noise, purple noise. Everyone knows about white noise, which is quite jarring. There's various other noises which are softened, which people like to listen to. You get those Bose ear headphones where actually what it's doing is playing a really low frequency in the background, so it blocks all the sound out around you. You also have binaural beats, isotronic tones, brainwave entrainment, ASMR, which is when you listen to the music, it's like tingles and crackles, which actually it's almost like you're being wrapped in cotton wool. It makes you feel comfort.
We like that.
You've also got the angel frequencies. And then the Schumann resonance, which is the Earth's resonance for grounding and all of that. So these are all the different things that I would listen to.
It's exciting.
Different frequencies that do different things.
It's fantastic.
It's crazy. Yeah. I love it. You know,
from an accomplished musician as well. Is it to find this at this point in your life? And actually, this is something which is this is something for our future now, isn't it? Like sound bathing and the effect of different frequencies upon the body.
So haven't been to a lot of sound baths, and I've been to a few sound healing retreats as well. One in Portugal, one in Coniston in the Lakes. I've been a frequent attendee here to sound baths, but also around. It's something that I thought I would love to do this, but not with bowls and gongs. I play an instrument, guitar, and the sitar. So kind of doing it in a melodic way and thinking back to Gruji's music, which that's what it is. It's meditative. It's healing. And
we need more of it, don't we?
So really what I'm planning on doing, I've actually already done it a couple of times. I got asked to do it, to do a sound bath with the guitar and the sitar. I did one on Red Car Beach. Actually, I know you guys frequent down there for like one of these yoga full moon events.
Yeah, is it? I know which group it'll be. Yeah. Fantastic.
And then I did one when I was in Coniston on a retreat, and I had the guitar there, and they just asked me on the last day, would you do it? And I was like, yeah, okay. Just improvised on the spot. But this is something I'm going to go into because it's very much part of the music I love, what I've done, what I've learned from Guruji, and what I've rediscovered in a different way, in a different format later now that I know that I've got within me to do.
So you've got a new album out?
So
is all of this invoked into this?
It is, yeah. So something people have asked me a lot over the years, and re-emerging back into music in the last couple of years and getting back into things and doing little things here and there and planning things as well, is I'm going to do an album. I'm actually going to do an album and 2 EPs, but mainly an album with guests, different people who I know, who I've worked with. So that's being worked on now in the very early stages. I've just bought a mixing desk actually, just so that I can do it all myself, because I was very much involved in music production later after working with the Shankars for quite a while. I actually got asked to do the music for a feature film. I didn't know how to do it. I just said yes. I had a mate help us, and then I got into recording, immersive audio, surround sound and all of this, which is another element of, for me, the healing power of music is that immersive sound and
fantastic.
All of that, yeah.
So, I mean, it's a podcast in itself about the frequencies, and I think it's been, from what you've described, an amazing journey from you, really, from the pits of darkness to then understanding frequencies, understanding your body and your mind spiritually as well, to then be putting that into an album, which, let's be right, ultimately will help others.
Yeah, I'm doing an album, but also going out as a performer, or as some people say, a facilitator of this sound healing music, and going to places like this and doing these events for other people to come. So it's not a concert where people are sat up, people are lying down and they're falling asleep because they're in that state,
With our plans with Every Man Can, as a kick, these are sort of some of the things we could be looking at in the future, and we'll be definitely one of the people we'd like to approach to have this conversation more. Are you happy to come back on in the future?
Absolutely.
Chat to us more about where this is going. Yeah. Any last minute tips you would give to anyone who's kind of going through a bit of a dark time, and kind of anything that you think the people should take?
Something that I've always said: be resourceful. We're in a position where information is easily accessible through the internet, Google. I'm an avid Googler of different things. So be resourceful and reach out and look for these things, because they're floating around. And don't be afraid to try them. Don't be afraid to be, oh, that's a bit like, that's not manly, or that's not masculine, or that's a bit hippie, or that's a bit girly or feminine. Just try it, because
100%.
some of these things will take you by surprise.
Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you,
Likewise,
listening to
thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick.
Hopefully look forward to getting back on in the not too distant future.
Yes, indeed.
Have a great week. Good luck with the new album.
Cheers.
Take care.
All right.